Now, the horrific culmination of failures by Boeing's engineers and management. That's the conclusion of a US House investigation which blames the plane maker for two 737 MAX crashes that killed 346 people. The report says a series of decisions by Boeing employees led to the crash of a Lion Air and an Ethiopian Airlines flight within 6 months of each other. The report also places blame on the Federal Aviation Administration for what it calls grossly insufficient oversight. The entire 737 MAX fleet is still grounded worldwide. Well, let's now speak to our White House correspondent, Kimberly Halkett, who joins us from Washington, D.C. Kimberly, some very strong words there from the Democrats.
Yeah, this report is certainly very comprehensive. It doesn't have a lot of new information in it, but in terms of the depth and breadth, it really outlines the problem, the scale and the scope of the problem, at least as perceived by the United States when it comes to the failures of Boeing and also the Federal Aviation Administration. What it says is that there was a pattern of technical miscalculations, management misjudgments, and oversight lapses on the part of not just Boeing, but also the management in terms of Boeing and its engineers, and as well gross oversight by the Federal Aviation Administration, which is the agency overseeing aviation in the United States. So this is certainly something that is going to have reverberations in Congress as they set forward trying to rectify the issues that led to these crashes.
Kimberly, just how partisan is this being regarded in D.C.? What might the next steps be?
The next steps are likely to be legislation in order to undo some of the damage that has been caused in terms of not only the reputation of the aviation agency that, really ensures safety in the United States, but you have to remember that there's an enormous amount of backlash that occurred as a result of these crashes. It led to President Trump grounding all MAX 737s in the United States, something that we saw all around the world. And there is expectation by the public here in the United States that there will be accountability. So this is something that will be rectified through legislation. What they're hoping to do is to really try and reform the regulatory system, which they say right now is flawed, and to ensure public safety will need to be repaired.
Kimberly Halkett there for us in Washington, D.C. Thank you very much, Kimberly. Well, we can now speak to Todd Curtis. He's a former Boeing airline safety engineer and also currently CEO of airsafe.com. He joins us now from Boston. Todd, as Kimberly was saying there, condemnation today, not just for Boeing, but also for the FAA. It does seem from this report like the agency left Boeing essentially to supervise itself.
Well, the supervision of safety at Boeing, as well as with other manufacturers, is a shared responsibility of the manufacturer and of the administration, the FAA administration. One of the big changes from when I was working at Boeing on early versions of the 737 is that there's another layer of management, a Boeing layer of management, between the FAA representatives and the FAA. Now, whether or not this caused directly an oversight that led to a system being in the field that led to accidents, that's not for this report to decide or for me. But clearly, this is a change that has potential for conflict of interest.
Sure. Well, Todd, I know there was some talk of the 737 MAX having its grounding order lifted soon, so it could potentially be back in the air by the end of this year. Might this report that we're seeing now have an impact on that?
It would certainly have an impact in that getting the aircraft back in the air is not just a U.S. decision. One of the unprecedented things that happened was that other aviation authorities around the world said, regardless of what the U.S. says about whether the airplane is fit to fly, it will have to go through them as well. That's something that typically doesn't happen.
Well, one of the points that this report makes is that Boeing withheld critical information from the FAA. That sounds very intentional. Could this potentially have further consequences for the company?
Well, certainly, if this is something that can be borne out in either a regulatory environment, such as what the Congress can do, or in a legal environment, such as the court system, yes, there could be consequences. But at this stage, it's entirely too early to say whether or not that has been proven to the point of there being a sanction.
Well, we have obviously this year seen a massive downturn in aviation and travel because of the pandemic. And there are also obviously huge passenger confidence issues around the 737 MAX. But it seems that airlines still want the plane. Will the plane still continue to be produced?
Well, the plane is being produced, and right now, of course, they're not flying commercially. But this is a situation where this aircraft is a central part of Boeing production for the next several years. And problems aside, there are improvements to this aircraft that make it very attractive for airlines around the world. So I'm confident that there will be 737 MAXs in the air, maybe not as soon as Boeing would like.
Todd Curtis, there, CEO of airsafe.com. Always great to get your insights here on Al Jazeera. Thanks for being with us, Todd.
Thanks for having me.